Hello and good day, eh? Welcome to the Super Good Camping Podcast. I'm Pamela.
I'm Tim.
And we are from supergoodcamping.com. We are here because we are on a mission to inspire other families to enjoy camping adventures such as we have with our kids. Today's guest is a bit different from our usual guests. He doesn't have a large social media presence in the outdoor adventure community. I don't believe he's a published author. He is an advocate for the environment and environmental responsibility, things like green energy, protecting wetlands, sustainable food systems, etc. In fact, he likes all things green. Please welcome the leader of the Green Party of Ontario and Guelph's Member of Provincial Parliament, Mr. Mike Schreiner. Yay,
Well, thanks,
welcome to the
Pamela. I appreciate
podcast.
that. Thanks.
So nice to have you
Keeping
here.
up.
We're so excited.
Yeah, big time. Just weirdly, we tend to do all the YouTubers, the Instagram. There's a whole wonderful community. I'm sure you've seen parts of your busy guy here in Ontario. That there's lots of people out there doing all those things every chance they get on the weekends, the whatevers. And there was a post, and honestly, I couldn't find it. I didn't spend a lot of time, but I remember seeing a post about you doing the, don't hold me to it, the annual canoe trip, daddy-daughter canoe trip, or something along those lines. And I went, wow, cool. How does that ever make sense? Because he does all that, like he's all about the environment stuff. Well, let's get him on the podcast. Let's see what happens. So I very tentatively reached out to your comms people, and they jumped right on. They were back to me like in no time. It was such an awesome experience. So thank on behalf of us for your comms people and for you being the awesome guy that you are. Thank you very much for coming out.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I have a great team, and I do a canoe trip with my daughter every year for the last 10 years, and I've been doing a lot of camping, hiking, paddling for my entire life. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart.
Excellent.
So where do you go? Where do you and your daughter go?
We go all over Ontario. I think Temagami is probably our favorite place to go. And so some of our best trips have been to Temagami. Wolf Lake is one in particular I enjoy. Lady Evelyn River, if you're able to handle those incredibly steep portages, which are intense. And you can navigate, making sure you don't run the canoe over any of those waterfalls. Is a pretty amazing trip as well. But we've done Algonquin many years. Barron Canyon is one of my favorite trips. Killarney's another favorite of ours. But we've done Massasauga, we've done Grundy Lake area, we've done lots of places. And actually, my wife and I went all the way up to Wabakimi and did a 10-day trip this summer.
Nice. Wow. Okay. So I had no idea. That's awesome. And so many of those are on my wish list. Temagami is one that I trip with our eldest son. Temagami's, it was going to be in the mix for next year, but now I want to do Queen Elizabeth II Wildlands just cause, and then we're going to do Temagami the year after. But cool. That's awesome. Wabakimi, man, you get in some far out places.
Yeah, we took Via Rail there, and we did it with some friends, and literally the train dropped us off in the middle of nowhere, and you could see other people on the train sort of waving, going like, I hope you're going to survive. Like, we're literally dropping you off. Like, and there's nothing nearby at all. And a friend of mine runs an outfitter, Wabakimi Outfitters, and he had a couple canoes waiting for us. And so we, quote, portaged, from the Via Rail tracks down to the canoes, and we're paddling for a week. It was fantastic.
That's awesome.
Hairy situations that you've been in those kind of environments?
I think I've never had a situation where I was, worried about my safety or anything like that. I will say that this a couple years ago when we did Lady Evelyn River, my daughter and I missed a portage spot and got us into some rapids, but was luckily able to steer the canoe over to the side of the river. We did do one 360 on our way to getting over there, and then had to bushwhack the portage, which was pretty intense. And my daughter was 16 at the time, so it was pretty impressive. Like she handled it like a trooper, had a great time, and yeah, and went out with me the following year. And she just said maybe a slightly easier trip next year.
Hey, Dad, maybe chill a bit.
Yeah, but she didn't pull the plug altogether, so kudos to her.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, she as a matter of fact, she's already told me that she wants to do Killarney next year. She wants to hike, was it Silver Peak? Which I've hiked with her older sister, but not with her. And so I think we're hoping to do Killarney next summer.
Nice. The big kid and I did 3 years ago, maybe something like that. We did a round in Killarney. We actually great. Now it's going to escape me. We stayed on an island site on the lake that you can see Silver Peak from, and it had instead of having a thunderbox, it had an outhouse, and carved big time onto the inside of the door was, "There is no trail to Silver Peak from here." Okay, cool. That sounds like a great hike.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic hike. And when I did it with my older daughter, it was a day that there was a thunderstorm rolling in. And so we sort of hiked up, enjoyed the peak a little bit. The scenery is phenomenal. But we had to go down fairly quickly because there was a lightning storm moving in. And obviously, we didn't want to be caught up there when that happened. So I'm hoping the next year when I go with my younger daughter, we'll have a little bit more time to enjoy the scenery.
Yeah, hang out and see it. It's a pretty. We haven't done Silver. We did the Crack, but just the scenery, just all that the white granite. It's such a different view from the typical, the pink and gray granite and the wind bent pines and all that sort of jazz. It's a very unique place. It's cool. Okay, so I've gotten a bit ahead of ourselves. So you've been doing this forever. What got you into it, and tell me some of the things that keep you going, to keep you wanting to do those things?
Yeah, so I grew up on a small rural community on a farm in the middle of nowhere. And so there was a little creek that ran through our farm that I spent many hours playing as a kid. And so always being outdoors was a big part of my life. And when I was a kid, my friends and we would go fishing and hunting, things like that. And I ended up joining a scout troop, and we did a number of camping trips, hiking trips. Mostly I grew up in rural Western Kansas, so not a lot of paddling. I didn't really get into paddling until I moved to Ontario, and quickly realized that Ontario is more of a paddling place than a hiking place.
Yep.
But I grew up traveling to the Rocky Mountains. I was only a 5-hour drive from the Rocky Mountains. So I did a lot of backpacking in the Rockies as a kid, and just thoroughly enjoyed it. And I do a lot of other outdoor activities. Like I love downhill skiing. I love cycling. So I do a lot in the outdoors, but I think it really came from growing up on a farm and just doing it as a kid and loving it. And I think what keeps me going is one, a love of nature. I just feel I don't know, there's something about you feel calm and grounded and sort of focused in the moment when you're in nature. And I'll have to admit there's a bit of a competitive side of me that likes the challenge too, and likes to push myself and prove that I can do certain hikes or paddle certain rivers or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, I just really enjoy spending time in nature. It's so peaceful, and I feel lucky that I've been able to spend so much of my life in nature.
Cool.
Well, and it shows that you appreciate nature. So you had a very similar upbringing to me, because I grew up on a farm, small farm outside a small town. and we had a creek running through our place too. So spent a lot of time either swimming in the creek or fishing in the creek or skating on the creek in the wintertime.
Yep, that describes my childhood as well. And we would toboggan down the hills into the creek a lot in the winter. That was always the big like slide across the ice of the creek as you barreled down the hills.
Yes, I know. Back in the days when we didn't wear helmets and all the things. Yep. Okay, so we know about some of your backcountry stuff, and you also mentioned hiking previously. Do you get out and do any hiking around here?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I paddle much more than I hike now. And just to tell you how avid I am on this, my wife and I, our honeymoon was spent hiking in and around Jasper. So, I just, yeah, I love it. But I would say in Ontario, I do spend a fair amount of time. The family, we spend. I love the Niagara Escarpment, so we the Bruce Trail. Like I'm a member of the Bruce Trail Association, and so we do a lot of just day hikes, family hikes on the Bruce Trail. Which I love. And then, living in Guelph, there's a number of great places to go for quick day hikes that the Grand River Conservation Authority manages. And then our house in Guelph is right on the Speed River. So we can literally put the canoe or the kayaks in on the river out of the backyard and or go for nice walks along the river. So I feel pretty lucky in that regard. But I would say I don't do as much hiking in the mountains like I used to, just because, it's a pretty significant travel obligation now.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to, I can't even think of something around here so much. Immediately Tremblant came to mind because they've got some great hiking trails and stuff out there.
So I will say my mom lives in Fort Collins, Colorado, and so whenever we visit her, we usually do at least one hike to the top of a mountain in and around the Fort Collins area. So I still try to. I mean, actually, I haven't visited her since pre-COVID, so that's put a cramp in our style. But certainly before that, we would usually go there once a year and either go in the winter and do some downhill skiing or go in the summer and do a bit of hiking while we're visiting family.
Nice. And you also mentioned biking. Do you get out? Do you do road biking and trail biking, or mostly trail biking?
Actually, mostly road cycling. I do have a mountain bike as well, so I do both. And then I have a commuting bike that I'll do easier trail ride, like, gravel rides that I wouldn't want to take my really good road bike on. But I love to go out. I don't get out on the road as much as I used to because, to get a good ride in is a 4-6 hour commitment. And, and I usually cycle, I don't know, maybe 23 clicks an hour or so. So I try to limit myself to maybe 40K rides for a couple hours, just because my schedule now is more intense than it used to be. But again, one of the great things about living in Guelph is, in 5-10 minutes, I can be out of the city and into some beautiful countryside to cycle on. And so I try to get out, at least once a week to do a 2-hour ride, when the weather's permitting.
Yeah,
Cool.
we're in Midtown Toronto. It takes us a long time to get out anywhere where we can go cycling.
Yeah. And dumping the canoe in the dawn is really not a thing that appeals to me much. Although we did, again, the eldest and I did a day down in the Toronto Islands. We just wanted to up our paddling game, and that was amazing. It's like I hadn't really thought about it because Toronto, it's a city. It's not a paddling destination like an Algonquin or a Killarney. Right. So that was nice, and I think we'll probably try to do that a couple more times, like next summer and whatnot.
Yeah, sounds great. It's been ages since I've been to the Toronto Islands, but they're beautiful. And I've never paddled the islands, but that would be I'm thinking that would be a nice, especially in a kayak, would be fantastic.
We saw lots of kayaks. We have a couple of canoes, but we took our set. Or we actually no, I think they supplied us with a 17-footer. But it was great. We saw herons, cormorants. Oh man, lots of turtles. Like you don't think about that. We're in a big city, like a massive metropolitan city. And it was pretty cool. It's like, oh yeah, we can get some chill and some nature here in this insanity. So
yeah, no, it's fantastic.
So if you manage, when you get, so okay, so daddy daughter gets out in a canoe for an annual, and you get out for occasional day hikes. Do you manage to, and you get the wife out? Okay, I'm just listing all the things I'm jealous of. I rack up 3 weeks a year, man. When you're excuse me, sorry about that. When you're like, how roughing it do you do, other than bushwhacking, obviously? But I mean, like, when you go backcountry camping, there's sort of varying levels. Talking with other people, lots of them take prepackaged dehydrated meals. There was a discussion recently about chairs. What are you talking about, chairs in the backcountry? How do you lean towards maybe a little bit of comfort? How does that all play out for you when you're doing that sort of stuff?
Yes, I think it's evolved for me over time. So when I was obviously in my backpacking days, it was very light, like, freeze dried food, things like that, because you're carrying everything. When I first got into paddling, and I was young, and I'm a foodie. So before I got into politics, I ran a couple local food businesses and was very involved in promoting Ontario food and farmers. And so
I was a customer.
oh yeah, awesome. Fantastic. I would take gourmet meals. Like, people would want to go paddling with me because, like, Mike makes these gourmet meals when we're out in the bush. Now that I'm a bit older, and I've hit 50 now, and the idea of carrying that much food on portage is just not appealing to me anymore. So I'm more than happy to do the gourmet meals at home, and I'm back to doing freeze dried meals and things like that. But I have noticed that and for a while, I occasionally will buy some of the pre-made stuff. I'll go to Mec or somewhere like that, but I tend to just do my own. Like, you can do some pretty amazing, like, like dry veggies, dry fruit, etc. And so I tend to go super lightweight now. And I was also really too cheap to buy, like, the high-tech lightweight equipment. But now that I'm hit 50, I'm more up on spending a little bit of money for higher quality, lighter weight equipment. So I tend to lean to the roughing it more side of things, but doing it in a way that makes the portage a little bit easier than you might expect. But on the chair side of things, my daughter's actually talked me into collapsible chairs, and you can get good collapsible chairs at a reasonable price, that pretty lightweight. So yeah, I've traded some food off for some chairs. How's that?
That's sounds exactly like the sort of path we've taken the last few years with Thomas and I. It's yeah, we got chairs. I think last year, this past trip, no, this year, we did a French River trip, and I knew we were going to be on lots of stone, not nearly enough trees, and that sort of deal. So we opted for collapsible light chairs.
Well, you'll have to send me your French River trip, because I would say the French River is the one place I haven't paddled yet that is on my bucket list. So I just feel like every year we, like, start to do French River, and then we choose somewhere else. So if you got any good French River recommendations, I'm all over it.
Absolutely. Email coming to you. I will say, man, I want to say I probably have taken 3 shots at planning it. And I just was semi terrified, because you can't book it 5 months out. So pre-pandemic, when things were sort of normal, as opposed to everybody and their brother going camping, I book it 5 months, book the full day, do all the things, and then I started looking at the French River, and you book it 2 weeks before. I was like, oh man, I can't I need to have that stuff planned out way before that. I was way too stressed about it. So I would keep bailing out from it. And finally I went, okay, I'm going to do it. We're going to do it. And it totally played out fine. It didn't, there was kid scheduling issues. But when we actually got to doing the trip, it was great. And it's an amazing experience. And absolutely, I will shoot you an email and let you know.
Well, and I don't think you stayed on any of the campsites you had intended to stay on in the French River.
Nothing. If you find yourself bored with lots of time, which you won't, Thomas and I did a trip log, which we've been publishing one day of each of, we did 8 days or something. So we've been publishing one every week, and absolutely nothing went according to plan. We started from point A and we finished at point A. Everything in between was not what it was supposed to be. It was great. It was an amazing trip. It was fantastic, but it's a good thing that sites are flexible.
I've had some trips like that too, and sometimes those are the ones with the best stories and the best memories. So
yeah. I don't think this one will leave us for a while. That's for sure. So you camp all over. Do you have a place, Temagami, you like to go back to? Is there a favorite trip? Or is there a favorite stretch of something that you like to do that you've done, half a dozen times?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorites for sure is the Wolf Lake Loop in South Temagami. Paradise Lagoon, if you ever have a chance to swim there, is fantastic. It's a great little portage into Wolf Lake. That's great. And the loop's pretty spectacular. And the old growth reds are beautiful. And so that's one that we've done a few times now, and I would certainly do again in the future. I would say the most spectacular trip we've done is Lady Evelyn, but boy, you have to make sure the portage around those falls are intense. I mean, we had some times where we were like the canoe was literally perpendicular, and I was at the top holding the canoe, and my daughter was at the bottom, and we were just inching it along. And I don't know, 50-meter, 100-meter portage would take 2 hours. Like, it was so like straight up, straight down, like roping the canoe to get it back in. So I would say that's probably one of the more spectacular ones. Wabakimi, oh my gosh. Getting there was a bit of a a bit of a trip to plan the train trip and get all that organized with Via Rail. But to be out for 10 days and not see any other people until your final day was pretty spectacular. Though I will tell you, I've never experienced so many black flies and mosquitoes in my entire life as I did in Wabakimi. So make sure you got plenty of netting and stuff to wear. But I would say, every trip I've done has its fond memories, and definitely Killarney, like the loop that takes you around to Silver Peak is one I've done twice now. And like I said, we'll do it a third time next summer. So that's a good repeat one as well. But boy, that one, yeah, you absolutely have to, 5 months to the day as you have your trip, you better book it or you're not going to get campsites.
Yeah, no. Well, and especially now that since COVID, I mean, everybody hasn't had anything else to do. So suddenly there's an extra, whatever, 10,000 campers or what have you. So it's been pretty insane. I tend to be a lunatic planner and usually plan sort of three options for where, if we're going to Killarney, here are the 3 loops or whatever it is going to be. And there was one year I ended up we tried to go to Killarney. I went through all my 3 options and did it at 7:00 in the morning, and probably spent 2 hours just finding, couldn't do it. I ended up bailing out. I had backup options for Algonquin, and my first one didn't play out. My second one played out, but I had to make 2 adjustments on that. Like it 5 plans. It took 5 plans to get to a trip. just I, blew my mind. Never experienced anything like that before. It's just, but I don't see anybody in the backcountry. There can't be that many people. Yeah, no, there are now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely changed since COVID, no doubt about that. I ran into that a bit last summer. My daughter has been working at a camp near Bancroft for the last couple of summers, which makes planning our trip a little more challenging because she's there all summer. So we have to make sure I do it during her break week. And because it's so close to Algonquin, I was planning a trip in just sort of the southeastern Algonquin. And I played around and played around and played around until I finally got a trip put together. But it wasn't the nice loop that I wanted, just because it was too hard to find spots.
Do you have any resources that you use when you're planning trips?
Yeah, I do a lot of internet searching, and I usually I zero in on an area that we want to do that particular year, and then I just read, blogs like yours, and base it off of what people are saying on the internet. I mean, I do consult some of the typical books that most people would consult as well, and just to try to get some ideas and things. But yeah, it's usually a lot of internet searching, and then I also have a number of friends who do trips, and so I'll chat with them, and and get ideas that way as well. So combination of ways of doing it. But I will say the Wabakimi trip was the first trip I've ever done where somebody else did all the planning, like in terms of it was the first time I'd ever had a guide or an outfitter plan a trip for us, and it was great. I kind of missed the planning, because the planning part of it is part of the fun for me, but it was also pretty nice to be able to do a trip and not have any of the planning stress.
Yeah, so where are we going? I'm following you. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of the people that we talk to are like, yeah, the planning, I like to get the food down all planned. I like to get like our route of where we're going all down planned. I think it is a part of the anticipation of this adventure that we're going to be having is planning it all out.
Yeah, well, and I think part of it is part of the challenge that, as you mentioned, I'm going to plan all these things, and then we're going to see how it plays out, because that's part of the challenge, right? So
yeah. And I love, so I plan our meals, 3 meals a day, snacks. I have it all planned out. I know, but then there's always variation to it. Like, for example, sometimes I fish, sometimes I don't. It depends, but you always, it's like, oh, we have fresh fish for dinner tonight. Scrap the dried veggies I brought along, so there's a bit of that for sure. And then the other thing I've learned is my daughter will oftentimes, by the last day, be like, Dad, do you think we can just make it back to the car today? So I always plan a little extra slack on the last day, just in case if we want to do the final night, we can, and if not, we'll have a bit longer, harder of a day, and finish a day early. So it just depends.
And getting out for the burger on the way home is always a good thing, regardless of whether it's the last day or not. That's always the best meal. I don't care how crappy that burger is.
Well, and I tell you, I have an electric car, and so on top of all the trip planning, I have to make sure that I plan the charging, especially when you get up in Northern Ontario, to make sure that I can charge the car somewhere too. So that's part of my trip planning now.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. Wow. Well, good for you. It's more of a challenge, right? Because you're sitting around with nothing else to do. Just out of curiosity, because we're talking about essentially all backcountry. Do you guys ever do front country as well? Like, do you ever take a 3-day or a 4-day and go plunk yourself at Arrowhead or something like that?
Yeah, we do occasionally. So Guelph Lake, which 15-minute drive from my house, so it's not like we're going very far away. But we'll do car camping at Guelph Lake, for example. We've done car camping a number of other places as well. So we'll do that for the weekend every now and then. Not as we did a lot more of that when the kids were younger. Like we were, the kids were younger, we were big time car campers. Less of that. We do more day trips now. It's like, we'll, find a nice hike on the escarpment. We'll, I don't know, I've even paddled the Humber River. So in Toronto, like just because I wanted to paddle down and then out into the lake. So, we'll do a trip like that, or the Grand River. We'll find spots on the Grand River to paddle on for the day. Nottawasaga. Oh my gosh, one year on Christmas Day, it was unusually warm, and we paddled the Nottawasaga in through Wasaga Beach, and it was hilarious because all these people were coming out onto their decks. They were like opening their Christmas presents. They were like, "Oh my God, there are people paddling on Christmas Day! Like, what's going on out here?" So we do some day trips like that. Beaver Valley, we've done. Like, yeah.
Cool.
Winter camping. Have you done any winter camping?
I've done some, not a ton. My daughter, I think I've convinced my daughter we may try to do a winter camp, but I particularly when I would do backpacking in the Rockies, like it's not uncommon, especially late June, for example, that I can tell you I've been up near tree line and woke up in the morning and it snowed all night, and you're in some pretty deep snowpack. And we do have snowshoes, and so we'll definitely do day hikes on the escarpment in particular, with snowshoes.
Cool.
Awesome.
It's a bucket list thing for me. It's not going to happen in the near future, but I'm slowly buying the gear to get ready to take a shot at it. Hopefully I'm not crutching my way in, caning my way in by the time I get there.
Well, I'm really impressed. There's a program in Guelph that a friend of mine who's a teacher runs. Like it's where they do a lot of outdoor education, and students apply to be a part of it, and they do a big winter camp. So it's like high school students, and she takes them out on a big winter camp every year, and so it's pretty amazing. The kids love it. Teachers enjoy it, and so anyway, so I'll have to get myself up for it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, David Bain. I can't even think of all the people. They just had a Ontario winter camping symposium. Don't hold me to it. I want to say it was out St. Catharines way. And they had a whole bunch of big outdoors guys and girls come, and they put on a whole weekend thing about outdoor camping, about tents, about twig stoves, the pellet stoves, like the log stoves for inside for heating, different ways to go about camping for outdoors. Like in a non-hot tent way to do it cold and stuff, which I don't know that I want to try that just yet, but okay, cool. Is there any story you want to share? Anything special you wanted to mention?
I would say the one thing I've really noticed over COVID is a lot more people out in nature who wouldn't have been maybe otherwise. And I think it's been fantastic to see. And so I know it's created some bigger challenges to reserving campsites and things like that. But I think it's fantastic. Like I really want nature to be accessible to everyone. And, one of the things I've been reading more and more about is just how important access to nature is to our mental health, our mental well-being. And so if I could be slightly political, since I am a politician, just to say how important it is, regardless of which, politically partisan stripe that you might have, just how important it is to protect and preserve nature. And I even think in cities, just how important even having a neighborhood park is, for kids to play in the grass or play soccer, do whatever. And things like the Toronto Islands you mentioned, or, those spaces and places are so important. And so I think it's just really important in both our urban, rural, and remote communities that we do what we can to preserve access to nature for people.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a theme we've had pretty much all our guests. That's kind of why we all try to that's what we all seem to try to be doing with the voices that we have, with the platforms that we have, is to get that out there, to say, we need to protect these green spaces. We need to have as many of these green spaces as we can, in whatever mode, whether it's a local park, whether it's the islands, whether it's the middle of Killarney. Yeah, it's good for everybody. Yes, there are challenges with all the extra people out there, but the more that people that get out there, the more that experience that, and like that, like it's good for everybody.
It's good for the people. It's good for the nature. So if we can get people to appreciate nature more, hopefully we get them to protect nature more.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think an important part of that thinking is, European settlers always had this sort of notion of pristine wilderness in North America. And, Indigenous people have been a part of nature and interacting with nature and enhancing and protecting this nature in North America for so long. And I think, I'm non-Indigenous myself. Those of us who are non-Indigenous, I think, have a lot to learn from the ways in which Indigenous culture and ways of life are so integrated and connected to nature. And I think we'll all be better off if we can learn a bit about how to incorporate nature into who we are and into, the kind of people we are and how we interact with nature.